the Angry Bird launcher. So this is where we like kind of left off. We have an arrow that shoots the balls in the direction the arrow is facing. So we have two choices. We can either we have two choices on things that we want to do next. We can either make it so that that arrow rotates with the mouse cursor, or we can make it so that the longer I press the mouse button, the harder it shoots. We're going to eventually do both, and it doesn't really matter which one we do next. So what do you guys want to see?
Can you make it be to where when you click and hold to like the velocity, you can also drag the mouse up and down to change the angle? Is that how you're doing it?
Yeah, we're going to start off. Yeah, we're going. Let's just do. Yeah, kind of like that. We're going to make it so as you move the mouse, it will change the direction of where it's aiming.
Let's do that first.
Okay. So the first thing is that we want to rotate this spawn point, right? So as I showed you, when I rotate the spawn point in here, we rotate the actual arrow that's attached to it, and in turn, it also rotates the direction that the balls fly out, right? So what I want to do is I want to adjust the pitch of this thing. So let's make it a little simpler than Angry Birds. How about as I move the mouse button left and right, it basically moves it between 0 and 90, right? So as I move the left mouse button, as I move the mouse, and it moves it left and right. Maybe you do. I don't know. You can make it whatever you want. So yeah. So what we want to do is we kind of want to get the current. I guess we want to have the x value, so moving left and right, or up and down. Maybe up and down makes more sense. So how about as we move the mouse up and down, we will rotate this thing left and right. For now, what we can do, like I showed you, you can set up axis event binding. So this could be the joystick and such. In this case here, I'm just going to use mouse Y just to prove that that can work too. And just to prove what this looks like, I'm going to print this thing out to the screen again. I'm using the mouse Y event in the Angry Fanboy launcher. And as I move the mouse up and down, see how the value changes here?
Where does it go up to?
It doesn't go up to anything. This is how much it's changed since the last time. So if I move it really fast, you see it actually can, like, it actually goes up to like 10 eventually. If I cranked up my sensitivity. So that number goes up. It actually, if I move my mouse very, very slowly, I'm continually moving this up. Notice it's actually going up very, very slowly. And moving it down is going negative. Okay. So we can use that to control the rotation of the spawn point. So I'm going to delete the print string. Let's drag the spawn point in a level. And what we want to do is we basically want to add an amount of rotation onto this spawn point. So I'm going to drag the spawn point in. I'm going to pull a wire off and do add rotation. And I'm going to do add local rotation. And local rotation just means, hey, only rotate it as if I'm rotating it in the component's view. Basically, rotated it as if I'm modifying this widget only. And what we want to do is we want to adjust the pitch, right? We want to take the pitch, and we're going to feed it into the rotation that's applied here. So we're going to drag a wire off of the delta, and we're going to make a rotator, just like what we did before for the Harlem Shake one. And then that's going to go into the pitch directly. Okay. Now if I play and I move left and right, you guys should see this arrow spin up and down as you rotate the mouse. You guys see that? Does that work for you?
So you're saying we have to add the limits, though, right?
Yeah, we got to do the limits. I'm not so worried about the limits for now, just because this works, right?
So fun. Yeah.
Pretty easy, right? Adding local rotation is good. Yeah, you can make all kinds of ideas are popping into mind. I think the next thing we need to do, now that we can aim this thing at what we want, right? I can even, with the way it's set up currently, I can aim backwards, which is kind of weird.
So you were doing that in Angry Birds too?
Yeah, you can aim backwards in Angry Birds too. I think you can actually aim down too. Yeah. You can totally aim in any direction. I'm not sure why you'd be able to. I guess that's part of the fun. So we could just leave it that way too. You can clamp it though if you want. It requires a bit more work to clamp it. So I'm actually going to hold that off because we only have 45 minutes. But the gist of it is that if you want to clamp it, you basically, before you add the local rotation, you would do a branch to see, hey, am I already at the limit of my rotation? And if I am, then don't do anything. If I'm not, go ahead and apply the rotation. So basically, you put a branch in between these two, and then you'd say, hey, the condition is, am I already at my limit or not? And that's it. So, OK, so let's make it so that the longer I press the mouse button, the stronger the shot is. Okay. And now the first thing I want to do is, let's set it up so that when I click, I actually want the arrow to kind of represent how strong the force is. So maybe I want the arrow to kind of grow, right? So I want to scale in size based on the length of how long I've held it.
You're getting fancy.
Yeah.
Or make it shrink up like it's coiling up to launch.
Sure, you can go the reverse way too. I just want something in the world to show to the player. It's important to tell the player how much force they're using on their shot, because we're not going to have a dragging mechanic yet, but the first step is just press and hold, and I'll just increase the force for you, right? So what force am I currently using here, right? That's the force that's being multiplied into the forward vector. It's 4,500 units. So what I can do is I can take this thing and I can increase it as long as I'm holding down the mouse button. So what I want to do is, when I press fire, I want to start increasing the amount of force I'm going to add. Okay? So as soon as I press and hold the mouse button, I want to have the amount of force that I'm going to apply start at 0 and count up to a maximum of some value. Maybe 4,500 is the max. Okay? Does that make sense? Like, I press it down, I'm going to add something to a number, just like what we did in the arithmetic version, where as long as I'm holding down this key, I'm going to add a value to a number. So let me just, for the sake of this example, we're going to disconnect the fire from the spawn for now, because this guy is going to control our arithmetic. Okay? So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you another nice trick about Blueprint. Go to where you're multiplying your force by 4,500 or whatever, and right-click on that input link and click Promote to Variable. This will automatically make a variable for you with the right type and let you rename it. So I'm going to call this thing force. Okay? You guys all see what I did there? I right-clicked on that and I did Promote to Variable, and I just typed in force as the name. And then compile. And then we're going to go all the way up to my the fire action here. And all I want to do to start is print out the force. So just print out this force. And by the way, here's another couple tricks, because I'm going to start going a little faster with regards to variables. Hold down Control while you drag a variable in. It'll give you a getter. Hold down Alt while you drag a variable in. It'll get you a setter. Okay? So that way, you can just control drag a variable in, and then you can plug it in like that. OK. So just on input action fire, just print out the force. OK, 4,500. Cool. So I want the force to go up as long as I'm pressing the fire button. The problem is that this thing only gets fired once, and we want to keep adding force over. Let's say it takes 2 seconds to charge our slingshot to full power. The problem is that this action has no concept of time. It only fires once. Like, I press the mouse button, that's it. It's doing it one time. I can't like add force. I want the force to kind of go like boop, bing, like fill up, right? What'd you say?
Interpolation?
We could use a timeline, right, to add the amount of force that is created, or we can also add things manually. So, what's that? Yeah. So what we're going to do is we are going to let me show you. Let's do it using a timeline first, and I'll show you how to do it without a timeline too, because I think it's kind of good to know multiple ways to do things, and you guys have already done timelines before, so it's pretty easy. Let's set it up so when I press the fire button, it starts a timeline, and then when I release the fire button, it will stop the timeline. Yeah, what's up?
Is this a separate blueprint chunk than our original fire button click to spawn the?
This is all going to be part of the same blueprint chunk. I'm going to show you how to connect the two, because it requires you to do a little bit of synchronization work where you don't fire it until you release it.
Okay.
So what we're going to do is let's just make a timeline to start. I'm going to name this timeline Force Accumulator. We're going to add a float track. And let's have this timeline be over 2 seconds, like I said. And the float track, you guys all remember how to do this, the timeline stuff?
I missed how you just got there.
Just double click on the timeline editor, and then click on the F button up here to add a float track. And then I set the length to be 2 seconds, and you can add a couple of keys by holding down Shift and clicking. And force is going to start at 0, and then at the end it's going to be, at 2 seconds it's going to be 4,500.
So add 2 keys.
Yeah, add 2 keys. I clicked on the first key and I just put 0, 0 for the time and the value. And then the second key I put 2 seconds and 4,500. Click on these 2 buttons, and then you can fit.
So 0, 0, and
This one I set to be at 2 seconds and 4,500. Okay, once you have that, go back to your graph. And instead of putting a string on update, what I want to do is I'm going to take the force. I want to set the force equal to what's being passed in. So I'm going to drag this into the level, holding down Alt. And on update, I'm just going to set the force equal to that. Oh, and your timeline, make sure it's doing a play from start, not play, because every time you click, we want to restart this from the beginning. Unlike the doors that we use the timeline for, where it kind of resumed where it left off, in this case, every time you click, you should start over from the beginning. Okay, so on my timeline, I'm setting the force. I'm going to print out the force as well, just to prove that it's accumulating. You guys should do the same thing. Just make sure your force goes up. So I have a print string, and then I'm plugging in the force in here. And what you should see is that when you click, the force should go up to 4,500 and then stop. Okay. And then when you release, all you have to do is plug it into spawn actor. Okay. So that's it. So you have a on press, you start a timeline, which is the accumulator, and on release, you're going to spawn your ball.
so now, when we did our the timeline,
Yes.
we went up to 4,500. Is that like the extent of velocity, or do we still adjust that through the blueprint?
So that is just the force that's being used here. So that's being multiplied into here. You should see this too, right? Like your timeline?
I still have that, but so the max velocity for the ball is based on that number.
Right, now it is, yeah. So whatever, if you want to make it go faster at the longer you hold it, you increase this value right here.
So you still have to adjust that.
Yeah, if you want to have the higher top speed, so let's say after 2 seconds I want to launch at 8,000 units, I would change it here in this timeline. So like now if I set it to be 8,000, after 2 seconds, it'll launch much, much faster. And if you want to limit it, if you want to go slower, you edit this here.
Okay, so what do we do with the values that are in the blueprint? Are they kind of
Which values are you talking about? Sorry, the this value?
oh no, I guess we got rid of it, didn't we? No, we didn't. Well, because we used to have it set up where it was like
4,500
yeah.
in here. Yeah, when you promote to a variable, it replaces it
Okay.
with an actual variable.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah. Okay, so let's scale our arrow based on the size of the force. Okay. If I go here and I go to the arrow, if I scale it along x, like to be 0.2, notice it squashes, right? So if all we have to do, we can adjust the scale to be, we can actually scale all these down. Like if I scale 0.1, 0.1, 0.1, that'll make it not only bigger, but also thicker, which might be something that's kind of cool. So let's do that. So as part of accumulating it, we're going to set the scale of the arrow. Because I want to show, because I don't necessarily know how strong the shot is, right? I don't know, there's no real difference between, like, visually between me holding it for 2 seconds and me just tapping it. You guys all have this working, right? You guys all have force? Michael, you good? Okay. So let's scale the arrow up. As part of adjusting the force, this force goes from what? 0 to 4,000, right? What we can also do is adjust the scale so that it goes up with the rest of the force as well. So let's do this. After we do set, we're going to grab the arrow. So grab the arrow and drag him in and do a get. And then drag a wire off the arrow and type scale. We're going to do set relative scale 3D. Yep. And this lets us adjust the scale of this in X, Y, and Z. What do I want the scale to be? Well, this number of force goes from 0 to 4,000 for me. So how do I translate that to a scale from 0 to 1? How do I take 0 to 4,000 and remap that, normalize it so it goes from 0 to 1? So what is, if force was 2,000, what would that be from 0 to 1? Like half the force should equal half the scale, right? Does that make sense? So my force goes from 0 to 4,000. What should a scale be at 0 force? 0. What should a scale be at 4,000 force?
100.
1, right? 1. If it was 100,
100%.
yeah, 100%, yeah. Or just 1 in this case. The scale is going to be from 0 to 1. So at 0, the scale is 0. At 4,000, the scale is 1. What is the scale at 2,000?
1.5.
What is the scale at 3,000? Right. And 1,000 is 0.25. So what is that formula? How do I map the force? Well, you guys are doing it in your head, but what does that actually translate to in Blueprint? How do I translate 0 to 4,000 to be between 0 and 1 instead?
Equal?
Well, what did you guys just do when I asked, what is the scale when the force is 4,000? How did you know that was 1? Percentage. It's really simple. So it's just a division operator. You just,
Imagine the dollar bill, and then I put like quarters.
well,
The old-fashioned way.
if I take the force and I divide it by 4,000, what do I get? This is the result, right? So if the force is 4,000, what scale do I get here? What is 4,000 divided by 4,000?
1.
What is 2,000 divided by 4,000?
0.5.
0.5. 1,000 divided by 4,000 is 0.25, right? This is just normalizing. This is the same way you normalize 3D vectors. You basically take the length of it and you divide it by the magnitude. So in this case, our force is 0 to 4,000. I'm going to divide it by 4,000, which will remap it to be a number that I can convert to be a vector.
Did you go float divided by float, or
Yeah, it was float divided by float, and I did 4,000. Whatever this number is, whatever your highest top end value is. Okay. And then we're going to drag a wire backwards from the scale, and we're going to make a new vector. And we're just going to plug this into all three of the components. Now, there's going to be a bug where it's going to keep growing even after you fire it, but that's fine for now. We'll fix it in just a second. And once you have this, as soon as you click, now you know it grows. Well, how long does it take for your timeline to finish? What is the duration of your timeline? Mine's 2 seconds.
it's 2 seconds. Actually, it's not growing slow. It's starting out really, really small.
Yeah.
Starting out like way smaller than it was.
Yeah, because that's going to be 0 force, right?
Mine's not getting that big anymore, though.
The scale of it? Are you dividing by the same number as the max value for your force?
Yeah.
Like mine is 4,000. Or is yours what is yours?
Mine's 6,000.
Okay.
I don't want to be a little crazy.
Okay.
I want to do a little more damage.
And what is the scale of your arrow in your blueprint? It should be 1.
Oh, that's probably wrong.
Because I adjusted the arrow size. I didn't touch the scale to scale this guy up.
Or not, it's 1.
And then I adjust the arrow size. And if you want to, you can keep one of these guys constant while you adjust the rest of these. So maybe I want like Z and X, or maybe I want just adjust X and Y so that it grows in one direction. So I'll leave Z alone. You can just disconnect the Z part here if you want. And that way when your arrow grows, it grows in one direction.
Mine's still small.
Let me take a quick look here with you.
You need to make it all. So look at your arrow. Just your arrow.
Scale is 1, and then crank up the arrow size. Mine's like 10.
Your opposite.
You don't hate it. If it crashes, you'll love
Well, I mean, I hate it at the moment. But otherwise, I like it.
Yeah, I put 10 in there.
Okay.
So do you guys see what I did for the scale? I just left the Z vector at 1 so that it actually grows in one direction only. Just like the boy band. Michael, you good? Is it scaling as you hold down the power button?
Well, at least it's not too bad.
That's okay.
Are you not allowed to have more than one option coming out from your pressed and release?
Right. You cannot. See what happens when...
After,
Yeah, so let's fix that. So how do I stop it? Because I want to stop this timeline. Remember back in like the second week of class maybe, I said you cannot connect more than one thing out to this? But I want to. Why are you not letting me? Well, for one thing, when I release, how does it know which one to do first? Should I stop the timeline first and then spawn an actor? Or should I spawn an actor and then stop the timeline first? Well, luckily there's a way you can do both in a way that Unreal is happy with, but lets you essentially have 2 outputs from a single thing. So drag a wire off the released and type in sequence. You're going to stop and then spawn. That is what your sequence is going to be. So the sequence is really straightforward. It's going to do the first thing, and then it's going to do the second thing. That's it. Yeah, so then 0 is stop, and then 1 is spawn. And that is our arrow launcher for our physics ball. Pretty simple, right? You can add more pins, so you can do things in sequence. This is how you work around the problem of wanting to do multiple things. All right, we have 25 minutes. I don't think we have time to go over the actual destruction part of it, but this might be enough for you guys to do the homework.
So sometimes it bypasses things, and sometimes it,
What do you mean it bypasses things? Like it goes through them?
like it'll go through it one time, and then it'll hit it the next time.
So your ball might not be on the same plane as some of the objects, so some of the objects may have shifted. In addition, sometimes your collision for your ball, there's a way you can have it also.
Like a higher radius or something.
Yeah, there's a way you can have it basically keep track of collisions in a more, yeah, here we go. Overlap blocking, physics body. There's a property you can set somewhere that basically says, hey, this thing is a projectile, don't tunnel through. It shouldn't be doing that by default, but we'll worry about that when we get to the actual brick breaking part. I feel like we don't have enough time to start the brand new thing. I don't want to rush it. What we can do though, is there is, Angry Birds has more than one type of bird, right?
Yeah. Have bombs and bombers.
Right.
Fast birds and slow birds.
Ones that split up into more birds.
Yeah.
Eagle.
So, and that eagle, the mighty eagle, which is,
Mighty eagle.
have you seen the mighty eagle, Dustin? It's kind of ridiculous. Yeah. Let me show it to you. So good, right? Isn't that so good? It basically.
I don't think you got 100% because you killed one of the pigs without
Oh yeah.
eagle.
Let me try that again.
You got to put it in place without killing any of the.
Yeah, the eagle has to kill all of them.
Yeah.
I think that's still good.
You only get 50%.
Oh yeah, I only got 80% there. No, I got 100. It's still good.
We clearly don't know how the eagle works.
The eagle just does what it wants.
So this is the kind of bird that we have right now. We don't have any of this breaking behavior yet. We'll do that next week. But we do have the behavior of one single red bird. What I want to do is make more types of birds, okay? So let's make one additional type of ball that we can launch that is, we can do that on, we'll just have it randomly pick between two, maybe. I think that sounds good for now. And then you guys will set up like an ammo system next, okay? So here is, go to your blueprint browser on the lower left here. Let's make a type of ball that when it hits, when it hits the ground, it explodes, okay? That's all it's gonna do, okay? So we can even make it, how about when you right click, it causes it to explode every time you right click. That seems like a fun thing to try to do. So we want the ball by itself. It's going to basically be the same ball, but we want to add some behavior to it so that when we right click on it, it blows up. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to right click on this guy. We're going to create a blueprint based on the ball. Remember back to the sword example that I did, the Skyrim sword, where I had the fire sword, the lightning sword, the smoke sword. Same idea. We're going to make a ball that is based on that. It'll bring up a new blueprint. It auto creates it, auto names it for you, which we'll rename in just a second. In this case, I want to auto receive input to be player 0 again in the default properties. Once you make the blueprint using that. Oh, and while you guys are doing that, I'm going to quickly make a level too, because I don't have a level. Yeah, we'll do that next week, but I'm going to call it brick. So I'm just making a, because you guys already have this, or you should have this already. You should have a mesh that is basically a cube, or whatever shape you want. Yeah, it has physics enabled, right? and we'll just use that for now.
You can't knock it over. You go too steady with the building.
Ooh, that one got an joint.
So if you don't have it raised up off of another object, it'll fuse to it.
It doesn't fuse to it. It just kind of sometimes behaves weird. It sometimes like falls over when I don't want it to. Yeah, this is good enough for an example, right? See, I'm not lined up. See if I look. See? And you can even just make sure you go into the ortho view. Those are my bricks. There's my spawner. So I'm just going to take the X location, 2350. I'm going to set this guy to be at that same location, 2350. So my launcher is now lined up with my bricks.
I'm pretty sure it was at 5.3.
Yeah, it was at 5.3. Bam. Also, if you have your bricks, notice how they're falling into the scene. Let's lock the axis of the bricks too while we're here. Again, just go here and lock the axis to be X. And that'll make it so that the bricks do not fall into the level. So now they'll always behave like the Angry Birds style. Right? Cool?
Wanted to introduce one of our students to Kate,
Oh.
Christopher.
Hey, Christopher.
And are you game or are you programming? Game? Do I have any programming guys?
Yeah, Joey here, Dustin.
Okay, so he's a programmer and struggling a bit right now, and I need some help with you guys. So maybe we can get to know one another. If you don't mind.
Sure.
Okay. Cool. And he's amazing, right, guys?
He's awesome.
Yeah,
He's awesome.
he's pretty
So
cool.
I'm okay.
He's not
let's
too
get
bad.
you here. So are you all going to take advanced game prototyping explorer? No. You're interested.
You can take it again, Dustin, if you want.
See, I told her that. I said I was sitting in the class, but she said it didn't count.
Yeah. Oh, that's.
As a seat, you know that.
We're making Angry Birds right now.
You ever seen that? You wanna look?
See, I think it's faster every time.
You've played Angry Birds, right? You're familiar with this game
Yeah.
where you have these little birds. So we're making this in Unreal 4, which, you know, why not? I already destroyed my bricks. We're making exploding bird now. So
Floating bird.
yeah. Okay, so we made the ball, right? So here's my regular ball, which I'm calling Angry Fanboy, and then here's the child off of it, which is what we just made. So what we can do is, first of all, let's make it so when I right-click, it creates an explosion around it. So go to the blueprint for your child, and we'll do a right-click or a right mouse button. Again, you should probably go through the action mappings in the project settings, so you can do like joysticks, and you can do gamepad press. Yeah, see ya. And what we want to do is when we press a button, did I set this up right? When we press a button, we want to create an explosion. Add force, radial force. Oh, right. This is slightly different. We can't just, we actually need to add a component on here. Yeah, what's up? Did you have a, or is everyone working on their ball that's the child of the other ball? Because we don't want all the balls to be explosive. We just want this one to be special. We do want to have some special balls. This guy, go to his components view, and we're going to add a radial force component. Okay, so
Oh, you just changed the name of the set connection. That's not even right.
for the ball, I just call it a ball.
What's that?
This one, I went to add component and I typed Radial Force.
And then you want it in the middle of the ball?
Yeah, that's fine.
Mine for some reason spawned at the bottom of the ball.
Yeah, if you're using a ball mesh, you can raise it up to be this mesh. The pivot is actually in the center, while the other mesh, the pivot is not. So a couple things about this radial force. One, I'm going to crank up the radius a little bit. Two, I'm going to cause the impulse to be a little bit stronger. 1,000 force doesn't seem like a lot to me. 5,000 seems like it is.
Full strength for 5,000?
Mm-hmm. What this radial force does is that basically everything in a radius around it will be exploded out from the center. And then if you want to fire it, go back to your graph and on right mouse button, you should now see, on the left, you see your component that you added. Drag a wire in there and then type fire impulse from your radial force component. So this is my radial force component I put in my blueprint, and then the thing I'm adding is a fire impulse. And then now we actually have to create this ball instead of our other ball when we shoot.
So I would just go back to the launcher
Yep.
and just change what it's drawn.
Yep, change the drop-down box from whatever it was to the child that you created. Let's see. There's also another, let's see, what did I screw up here? Oh yeah, when you change it, it disconnected this link for me. If you guys get an error, make sure your spawn actor is connected to set physics linear velocity here, because it disconnected that for me for some reason. One more thing. We also need to make sure, let me just make sure that this thing is actually firing here. I believe the other thing we need to do is in the explosion component, under the object types to effect, we're going to have to add physics bodies. It's actually already in there. I want to say maybe this thing is actually not strong enough. Let me just test.
I have a blueprint error.
Oh yeah, that's this thing. Check that your spawn actor is connected to your. It disconnected it when you changed the new thing in the drop-down box. Yeah. I want to say the force is not strong enough. Maybe. Let's do. I'm just going to do something crazy. See here, pulse velocity change.
So if I just drop the ball and then I right click, it like launches the ball up. But if I launch it at my, it doesn't do anything.
Oh, like that?
Yeah. It's like I drop it, but if I hold it down and I launch it, it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, you know what I think is happening is I think while it's in the air,
Are we losing? Did I turn?
it's actually
Does it matter?
no, I think it's actually, you know, for a second here. What I want to have happen is, let's just change this to be 100. I think these things are not actually responding to the explosion. Sorry, give me 1 second here. Need to find out where it's actually breaking. Oh, yeah, good call. Because the ball is actually the thing that's moving. We want to actually have the ball be paired, the radial force to be paired to the ball. I didn't catch that. Thanks, Joey. Yeah, now when I right click, it like hoovers away the bricks. Okay, so you guys got all that, what Joey said? Make sure the radial force is parented to your ball mesh in your new guy.
Mine was nuts in power though when I did
Mine's not doing anything.
Make sure your ball is set to auto receive inputs on the player 0.
Jeez, Joey, that's so much fun.
Go to your defaults.
That could be a game in and of itself.
Go to your components.
What is that? I don't
How
know.
much
You might not
destruction
have
can you
enough.
Force strength probably?
If you click that checkbox, that'll do a lot for you. That'll change so that you move 50 meters a second.
Do I need to change this?
No, that should stay the same. Go ahead and play, and then did you change it to spawn this guy instead?
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't notice, but I thought I said L 39 to go and start with
That's
that.
working. It's just not. You just didn't have enough force before.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just like, oh,
Well, for one thing, we should also let you only explode at once, right? And then let's do one more thing. Let's make the ball look a little different for the exploding one versus the regular one, so we can tell the difference. So first, let's destroy this guy after he's blown up. That's really easy. Just drag a wire and call destroy actor, because you don't want it to fire multiple times for each ball that you fire. You really only want it to happen once.
destroy actor?
Yep, just destroy actor. You can even spawn an emitter, which I'm going to do just because. I'm going to spawn an explosion because it makes sense. And I'm going to spawn it at the actor location. You guys have done this before too, because this was part of the previous lab. So now when I right click, it will create an explosion. It creates it at 0, 0, 0, which is not actually what I want. Let's create it here. I'm going to use the position of the explosion component, get the world location of that, and that's going to feed in here. So now it's destroying itself and has a little particle effect. The problem is I need to change the order of these. It's destroying it and then spawning at the wrong location. So I'm going to spawn the emitter first and then destroy it. There's my little explosion. Bam.
I feel like the explosion should be a lot bigger.
Why not? We can just take the emitter that's returned here, and we can set scale. And we can just crank it up to say, I don't know, 5 times what it is. Didn't actually do much. What happens when I set this thing to 50? It may not scale properly. Some parts are scaling, but not all of it is. We might have to just go into the emitter template and tweak it. In the 5 minutes I have left, though, I'm going to show you how to set up the ball to look different. So here's a problem. Go to your components view and try to change the material on your ball. You can't. There's no properties for your ball. How come I can't edit the properties here? Well, if you go back to my very, very poorly drawn paint example that I had last week, where I showed you guys, like, there's actor, right? You guys remember this terrible? You can't. So here's our ball, right? We had our ball. And then as a child of that, oh my God, I ran out of room. It's okay, it's paint. We can do this. As a child of that, we have our ball, which is, I think in this case, we have our child, right? So here's the thing. We're editing, like, this guy right now. We're editing him. When you're editing him, you cannot modify properties here. If you want to edit, like, properties on a ball, you have to edit this guy here. Now, the child can add whatever he wants to, and he can edit those, just like how we added the explosion. But the ball himself is untouchable. So if we want to change, I want to change the material here, so he's using a slightly different material instead of this one. But I can't change it here. And if I change it in the regular ball, it changes it for all the balls, so they'll all look the same. So if I go back here, go back to my original ball, I can change properties here, and I can add a material. If I go down to rendering and I add a material, and I make it look like like that. Then when I go to my exploding one, it also looks like that. How do I make the exploding one look different from the regular one?
Put another ball on top of it.
You could put,
Red,
what's that?
make it red.
I can't make it, well, if I make this one red, they'll all be red. Like if I make this one this thing, the child is that thing too. How do I make the base one look different than the child one without adding a new mesh? Well, the problem is I can't edit, if I'm in here, I can't edit the properties of the ball unless I added it myself, right? Like I need,
Bigger ball around it.
yeah, then I'll have two balls that are both simulating physics. How about if I change it so that the ball is actually something that I added in the child instead? Okay? So let's do that. Let's go here, and if I delete this guy from the base, and then I compile.
Wait, so you just deleted the original ball?
Yeah, I'm going to delete the original ball. And I go here. Now the child has no ball that he has, but that means that I can add one myself.
I still have a ball.
Compile your original one. Like go back to your original ball and compile. You'll be missing. And here's my mesh. And I can attach my ball. Now I have my own ball here. I'm going to give it the, there's always this one like hex material. This is the guy right here. It's an exploding ball. But now my regular ball doesn't have a mesh on him. This is what my regular ball looks like. Nothing. I can't just add a ball here, otherwise it'll, look what happens when I add a ball here now. Like any ball that I add here will also add it to the child. So if I add another ball, I know this is kind of confusing, but now I actually have two balls here in my child. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this guy not have a ball at all. This Angry Fanboy, the original, is not going to have anything. I'm going to make yet another blueprint based on that. First, I'm going to rename this guy from child to be exploding. Then I'm going to make yet another blueprint based on this guy.
On the exploding?
No, I'm going to make it based on the original, the one that exploding was based off of. So the original ball that you had, the very first ball that you made, make another one, make another blueprint based on that. And this guy I'm going to call regular. So look at my list of things here. I have Angry Fanboy, which is the thing that I'm launching. Then I have an exploding version of him, and I have a regular version of him. Both of these two guys were based off the original. What that means is that I can go here, and here in my second child that I just made, I can add the ball that I had before. So I can go in here, and I can specify my ball. Make sure it's,
Turn simulate physics on?
yep, you still have to turn simulating physics on each one. But now I have two balls. I have this one and this one. They're both different. They have different materials on them. And this is important because I want the way that I fire these things to be exactly the same. Angry Birds has a lot of different types of birds that you can launch, but they're all using the same mechanic to throw them, right? I just click and drag and they all fire. That's what I kind of want to mimic. I want to shoot this guy and the exploding one. And in fact, let's set it up so that it randomly picks between two whenever I fire. So just to prove that it works this way, when I play the game now, this guy has what is broken?
Oh, did we change the name?
Yeah, but that shouldn't matter, but maybe it does. Blueprint is not. Oh, because now that, yeah, I did screw around with the meshes a bunch. This thing doesn't quite work right. What we need to do is
Replace the set physics?
yeah, I'm going to, because I'm spawning one of these guys here, spawn boy regular, we're going to do,
Linear, right?
Yeah, set, we're going to do, yeah, set physics linear velocity. On the exploding one. I just want to prove that we're spawning the glowing one. And recompile and play. So here's my glowing guy. And if I change this to be the regular guy, yeah, I gotta do this again. There's my regular ball. And they both launch the same. Okay. So for homework, because you do have homework, it's just one thing. I just want you to make a new type of ball that does something different other than exploding when you right-click. Okay. Whether that means that the ball splits up into 3, like in Angry Birds, or it speeds up when you click on it, like there's a bird like that, Angry Birds, or whether it turns into a giant ball, like scale it up really, really big. I don't really care what you do. Just make another type of ball that is different, that does something when you right-click, okay?
I'm gonna make an eagle.
You're going to make the giant eagle?
Yeah.
Okay. That's it.